It was July 26, 1991, 5 days before the birthdays of Harry James Potter and Agnes Lauren Parker. During that time, Harry was staying with his Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia. Both tried to mistreat him the way they had mistreated Patrick Harvey, a boy who was once in their care. But Harry refused to tolerate their mistreatment and stood up to them, refusing to be treated like a servant. This determination and courage would prove to be an important part of Harry's character, and would serve him well in his future adventures. Yet, he longed to get away from the Dursley family and return to the Evanses, where he would surely feel welcome. At the same time, Agnes had had enough of the Dursleys. She decided it was time to take matters into her own hands and reunite Harry with the Evanses. Also, she was determined to find out what had happened to Lily and James Potter. She knew that the answers to all of their questions lay in the past, and she was determined to uncover the truth. However, there were also drawbacks to Agnes's plan. She knew that if the Dursleys found out what she was doing, they would be furious. Additionally, she was not sure if Harry would be ready to face the truth about his parents' deaths. At this point, Vernon and Petunia still hadn't figured out that Harry wasn't Patrick. It was apparent that Harry looked like Patrick, despite being taller than Patrick. They were so convinced that Harry was Patrick that they didn't even ask simple questions that could have revealed the truth. The fact that they never asked Harry any questions about himself should have been a red flag. Nicholas said to Harry, "Well, you're a very convincing actor, Harry Potter. Vernon and Petunia are so blinded by their stupidity that they don't know that you're their nephew." Harry smiled, feeling a sense of pride. He had fooled his aunt and uncle, and it was easier than what he had expected. Harry then said, "Well, you know what they say, the best actors can fool anyone." Nicholas replied, "That's true, and you certainly did that. They don't suspect a thing." Harry smiled and nodded, feeling satisfied. Agnes joined them, saying, "Well, it's official. Vernon and Petunia Dursley are the dumbest people in Britain." Agnes laughed, and Harry and Nicholas joined in. They were glad that their plan had worked so well. "I'm not surprised," said Nicholas. "Dumbledore may have put a curse on them when they took Patrick in, but their natural stupidity will lead to their inevitable end. But that wasn't all, as there's more to come, especially as far as Harry and Agnes were concerned." As for Patrick Harvey, he was having a difficult time with the Evans family. While he was used to Vernon and Petunia yelling at him and making him do all the chores, Lee and Mary treated him as a member of the Evans family. For instance, Mary often asked Patrick to join her and Lee in their activities, something that Vernon and Petunia never did. Yet Patrick still found it difficult to adjust to living with the Evans family, as he was used to living in a household where he was treated poorly. The sudden change from being mistreated to being treated well was confusing for him. Additionally, while he appreciated the inclusion from Lee and Mary, he still felt like an outsider in the family. While Patrick was recovering from years of forced servitude, Nicholas came to visit him. Nicholas asked him, "How are you feeling, Patrick?" Patrick said, "It's difficult for me, but I'm doing my best to get better." Nicholas smiled and said, "That's all that matters." Patrick said, "I wonder what happened to that other guy who looked like me. Did the Dursleys do anything harmful to him?" "Who?" "Harry," said Nicholas. "Don't worry too much about him. Right now, Harry is standing up to Vernon and Petunia and putting them in their place. Plus, Vernon and Petunia are learning that Harry isn't anything like you, and he won't be bullied into submission." "And what about Dudley?" said Patrick. "Is he tormenting Harry as well?" "Well, Dudley was banned from playing video games for the entire summer, and Harry is teaching him a lesson that is nobody's punching bag," said Nicholas. "That's good," said Patrick. "But the most important thing is that Vernon and Petunia don't know that Harry has taken your place," said Nicholas. "Because of that, we need to be extra careful. If they find out, it won't be good for us. Nicholas would have continued, but then he said, I have to get back to Harry, but I'll see you on your birthday. Patrick nodded, wondering how long it would take for the Evans family to send him back to the Dursleys. It was one thing to dress as Harry Potter, but it was another thing to pretend to be Harry Potter. Patrick knew that it was only a matter of time before Lee and Mary found out that he wasn't Harry and forced him to return to the Dursleys. On the other hand, Patrick also knew that the Evans family was very kind and that they would never force him to return to the Dursleys. They had already taken him in and treated him like family, and he was sure they would continue to do so. Patrick sat down on the front porch, not knowing that within a few days, an unexpected event would free him from the Dursleys forever. July 30th, 1991, the day before Harry's 11th birthday. At the same time, the Dursley family had resigned themselves to living in ignorance, as far as Harry Potter was concerned. For example, they were so determined to keep themselves unaware of any magical activity, that they refused to watch or read anything related to it. Instead, the Dursleys preferred to focus on their mundane, everyday activities. They refused to talk about magic, and actively discouraged any of their acquaintances from doing so in their presence. As for Harry, he was still pretending to be Patrick Harvey, but he forced Vernon and Petunia, as well as Dudley, to stop bullying him. For instance, every time Vernon or Petunia tried to make a cutting remark, Harry would simply raise his eyebrows and glare at them until they stopped. This made Vernon and Petunia uncomfortable. They were used to having the upper hand over Patrick, and now that was taken away from them, no thanks to Harry. Harry, however, longed to return to the Evans family, where they made him feel welcome. He missed the loving family he once had, and he started to feel lost without them. But he had no idea that he was about to get his wish soon. So, when a giant came to the Dursley house that night after everyone went to bed, it was the break Harry had been waiting for. With that unexpected visit, Harry was one step closer to returning to the Evans family. Are you kidding? Nicholas snapped as he stared at the giant. He had come to speak to Harry when no one else was around. Why are you here, Rubeus Hagrid? I've come to speak to Harry, of course, said Hagrid. I've come to tell him about his family. Indeed, Nicholas snapped as he glared at Hagrid. Let's do this. Before Harry could ask what was going on, Hagrid settled himself onto a sofa and told his story. There was a time when the wizarding world was peaceful. There was no need for the Ministry of Magic to step in, and no need for magical creatures to hide from muggles. Then you know who showed up, gathered several hundred followers, and killed muggle-born wizards and witches, squibs, and anyone else who got in their way. The Order of the Phoenix was formed to counter the attacks of those fiends. Then one night, he shows up and kills both your parents. You mean to tell me that he killed my parents, said Harry. He had never asked Lee and Mary about how and why his parents died, nor did he feel the need to know about that. Indeed, said Hagrid. He would have killed you as well, but he failed, and you ended up getting that scar. Harry pulled back his hair, revealing the lightning bolt-shaped scar on his head. He was rather sensitive about it, as he always kept it hidden underneath his hair. When he was 5 years old, Lee once made the mistake of taking Harry to the barber shop to have his hair cut. This resulted in more than a few stares, and some not-so-nice remarks about him. Harry did not appreciate that at all, and he let Lee know that through a collapsed upside-down pineapple cake that Mary had baked that day. I see you have that scar, Hagrid. I will not lie and say that so many people haven't counted on your survival after the Dark Lord's attack. So, what happened to him? Harry asked. Some said he died that night. Others disagree. But everyone knows you defeated the Dark Lord, said Hagrid. And how did that happen? Nicholas said angrily. As far as I could tell, Harry hasn't done anything worthy of the fame that was forced upon him. And can you explain what happened to Agnes' family? From what I was told, Adeline Connor and Toby Parker were killed by Death Eaters in the aftermath of the Wizarding War, leaving their only daughter an orphan, said Hagrid. As a result, Agnes was given to your uncle and aunt. Say, where are they anyhow? I hope you're not talking to anyone, Patrick Harvey, Petunia snapped as she stared at Harry from down the hall. You're supposed to be in bed, young man. I'm in bed, Mrs. Dursley, said Harry, and I'm not talking to anyone, except for Nicholas. Who? That spineless twisted little dwarf. Petunia yelled. You're a bigger fool than your parents, and I'm sure that they were known for the company they kept. If you're thinking about going down their path, think again. Yes, Harry said as he closed the door to his room. He then said to Hagrid, I think you might need to leave. My Aunt Petunia is in no mood to have unwanted guests here. And I shall, said Hagrid. But I will meet you again, when it comes time for you to prepare to go to Hogwarts. And what's a Hogwarts? Said Harry. What's Hogwarts? Said Hagrid. Only one of the best wizarding schools in England, if not the rest of the world. Surely you can't not know what Hogwarts is. Or have you not received your letter? I have, said Harry. And what about Agnes? The giant sighed, then said, I wasn't supposed to be telling ye this, but the headmaster feels responsible for the deaths of Agnes' family. He hopes by bringing young Miss Parker to Hogwarts he'd patch things up with her. And how is that possible? Said Harry. Agnes' parents are dead, and we don't know if she had other relatives to take her in. Aye, that's right, said Hagrid. But then again, we don't know much about the Parker family, except that they are muggles. So, we must wait and see if she decides to go. But they had no idea that going to Hogwarts was Agnes's only choice. At the same time, the Mobley twins Ginger and Twyla had suspected that Patrick Harvey was in their house, but they didn't say anything to the others. Of course, the girls taught Patrick how to behave properly, as in they made him sit in a corner and read or crochet. Patrick was tired of sitting still, and he longed to go outside and play with the other children. That day, Hagrid dropped off Patrick's Hogwarts letter while everyone was asleep. Patrick read the letter, not believing that all of the suffering that he was forced to endure when he was living with the Dursleys was leading to this. Patrick was forced to live with the Dursleys so that he could go to Hogwarts. This made him angrier than an ordinary 11-year-old, but he was also excited to see what Hogwarts had in store for him. However, upon reading the letter, Patrick's excitement quickly turned to anger. He was bitter that he had to suffer while the other children could go to school like normal. He was determined to make the most of his time there and prove to the rest of the world that he was not the worthless person the Dursley family thought he was. But Patrick thought about how the Dursleys had mistreated him while they treated Agnes, Jonathan, Adrian, and Nicholas better, and he grew angry. He realized that he had subjected Harry to a painful summer with the Dursleys, even if Harry had gladly put the hated family in their place. Patrick found himself whispering a curse, may they pay for what they've done. May they never be happy again. May they suffer like I have. He nodded, knowing that his curse had been heard, and the Dursleys would pay for their actions. He felt a strange sense of peace and comfort in knowing his wish had been granted. At the same time, Lee Evans felt the ground shake, thanks to Patrick's curse. Fearing for his family, his wife Mary was about to give birth to her 5th child. He took everyone to the hospital. But when they got there, the doctors took one look at Patrick and realized that he needed help. Despite the Evans family helping Patrick recover from the abuse that the Dursleys had inflicted on him, Patrick still suffered from malnutrition and PTSD due to years of mistreatment. He was also severely underweight and had a weakened immune system. The doctors told Lee and Mary that Patrick needed intensive medical care and nutrition to get him back to a healthy weight. They also suggested that he receive therapy to help him process the trauma he had experienced. Lee and Mary agreed, knowing that Vernon and Petunia Dursley were responsible for Patrick's condition. As for Vernon and Petunia Dursley, they decided to take Harry, Agnes, and Dudley and go for a drive. As they were driving along the street, their car was involved in an accident, which killed Vernon and Petunia. Harry, Agnes, and Dudley survived with minor injuries. When Harry woke up in a hospital room, he saw Lee sitting next to him, holding a small baby. "Where am I?" Harry said. Lee said, "Well, you're in the hospital, Harry. I can't say too much right now, but you were involved in a car accident." "You knew," Harry said. "You knew I was with the Dursleys. They were trying to take me away with them." Lee nodded sadly. "I know. But it's okay now, you're safe here." He put a hand on Harry's shoulder. "You don't have to worry anymore." Just then, the baby started crying. Lee frowned, looking at the baby. "I'm sorry," he said. "I have to go take care of her. But I'll be back soon." He gave Harry's shoulder a gentle squeeze before getting up and leaving the room. Harry frowned, not knowing what was going on. All he knew was that 1 minute, Vernon and Petunia were loading him into their car, and now he was in the hospital. There was no sign of Dudley and Agnes anywhere, and even Nicholas wasn't there. He could only assume that he had been in an accident, but he couldn't remember anything. He felt a sudden wave of panic and confusion as he wondered what had happened. "It's true, Harry," a voice cut right into the fog that Harry was still stuck in. "You were in a car accident. I had warned Vernon and Petunia that if they didn't start treating that boy right, it was going to come back to them." "Nicholas," Harry said when he saw Nicholas sitting next to him. "Why are you here?" "I came as soon as I heard," said Nicholas. "I should have stopped them, but they didn't listen to me. Now I'm cleaning up the mess they made. I hope Dumbledore is happy." Harry nodded, wondering what he was going to do next. No one wished him a happy birthday. And why would they, when he survived a car accident and was left alone to suffer? He still hadn't heard from Agnes, and who knew what was going on with Dudley. However, things could have been worse. Harry could have died in the car accident instead of surviving. At least he was still alive, and had the chance to make something of his life. He was grateful for that, even if no one else seemed to be. Eventually, Nicholas said, "As for your other uncle and aunt, their daughter Matilda Liliana Evans was born this morning in all this chaos." "And what about Patrick?" said Harry. "Is he going to be okay? I already know that Vernon and Petunia put him through hell." "Oh, he'll be fine, but he has a long way to go," said Nicholas. "After all, Patrick must learn how to undo the years of abuse that Vernon and Petunia had inflicted on him. It won't be so easy for him to do that as long as Albus Dumbledore is still in charge of him." Harry frowned, knowing that the Evans family was on their way to see him. Given what had happened to him over the summer with the Dursleys, he was sure that Lee and Mary wouldn't let him leave the house until it was time to go to school. He knew that they would try to protect him from the outside world, and he wasn't sure that he was ready to face it yet. He sighed, wishing he could go back to the summer and undo the events that had led him here. On the other hand, maybe it was better that he was here with the Evans family. They were kind and understanding, and he knew that they would never mistreat him like the Dursleys had. They would help him to face the outside world when he was ready, and they would be there for him when he needed them. But he would deal with that later. Right now, he felt safe, and that was all that mattered. He knew he would have to leave eventually, but for now, he was content. Within a week after the car accident, Vernon and Petunia Dursley were buried. Harry frowned as he heard the priest read the final rites. He looked at the mourners, all dressed in black. Most of the people at the funeral were glad to see Vernon and Petunia go, as they never actually liked them. The only person who truly mourned for Vernon and Petunia was their son, Dudley. At least Dudley got to grow up with his parents, just as Robbie, Louise, Felix, and David had their parents, Harry thought to himself as he watched Lee and Mary talking to several people after the funeral. The Dark Lord Voldemort killed my parents when I was a baby, and who knows what really happened to Agnes' parents. Baby Matilda is so lucky that she'll never get to meet Vernon and Petunia, as messed up as they were. Harry wished he'd had the same opportunity to know his parents, but he had to be content with the fact that Lee and Mary had chosen to take him away from Vernon and Petunia and raise him themselves. They had given him a loving home and a chance at a better life. Harry was thankful for all that he had, and for the people in his life who had chosen to love him. As for Agnes, she would have to decide where she would be going to school, as the boys were going to Hogwarts and most schools in Britain she knew wouldn't accept an orphan like her. Yet, there was the possibility that she could be accepted into Hogwarts as well. At the same time, Harry and Agnes had to make a decision regarding Agnes's future, a decision that would change the world forever.